When you walk through Singapore today, clean streets, modern skyline, safe neighborhoods, it's easy to forget that just 60 years ago, this place was struggling to survive. But behind Singapore's rise stands one extraordinary family, a family that didn't just live through the nation's transformation, but shaped it. This is the story of the Lee family, the family that built modern Singapore. Their influence reaches every part of life, from politics to economy, from education to the way Singaporeans think about discipline, hard work, and unity. It's a story of leadership, sacrifice, and sometimes controversy. Because this isn't just a political dynasty, it's a legacy of ideas about how a small, resource-poor island could rise to become one of the richest and safest places in the world. The name Lee Kuan Yew is known everywhere, but behind him were others, a wife, a son, a family who carried the same vision. This is not just the story of one man, but of a household that made Singapore what it is today, strong, efficient, and deeply respected around the world. So sit back as we unfold how this family, the Lees, turned a struggling island into the Switzerland of Asia, and how their influence still shapes the lives of every Singaporean today. Part 1. The Visionary Father. Lee Kuan Yew. Every great nation has a founder, a person whose vision turns struggle into strength. For Singapore, that man was Lee Kuan Yew, the architect of a nation that rose from swamp to skyscraper. Born in 1923 under British rule, Lee grew up in a Singapore that was poor, overcrowded, and racially divided. During World War II, he lived through the Japanese occupation, a brutal period that shaped his fierce determination. He saw what happens when a country is weak, when its people have no control over their destiny. That experience lit a fire in him, a lifelong mission to make Singapore self-reliant, disciplined, and respected. When Singapore gained independence in 1965, it wasn't a celebration, it was a moment of fear. Expelled from Malaysia, the tiny island had no natural resources, no army, not even enough fresh water to supply its people. Many thought Singapore would collapse, but Lee Kuan Yew refused to accept that fate. Standing on national television with tears in his eyes, he declared, "We are going to survive." And survive they did, through his relentless drive for excellence. Lee didn't believe in luck. He believed in systems. He built a government of meritocracy where only the most capable could lead. Corruption, which crippled many post-colonial nations, was not tolerated. He introduced transparent salaries for ministers and civil servants so that honesty would pay better than bribery. He modernized the port, turning it into a global shipping hub. He encouraged multinational corporations to set up factories, creating jobs and attracting foreign investment. He also made English the common language, giving Singaporeans access to international business and education while still preserving their Chinese, Malay, and Indian roots. His Housing Development Board, HDB, became one of his greatest achievements. Within a generation, Singaporeans went from living in slums to owning modern apartments, a key reason for the nation's social stability today. Schools, too, were reimagined. Education became the backbone of progress. Children were taught to work hard, speak well, and think globally. But Lee's leadership came with a steel edge. He ruled firmly, sometimes ruthlessly. Political critics and dissenters often faced legal and social pressure. Yet for most citizens, his strictness brought peace, security, and pride. Singapore became a place where buses ran on time, streets stayed clean, and the law applied to everyone, rich or poor. Some called him authoritarian, others called him a visionary, but few could deny the results. Under his watch, Singapore's GDP per capita soared, poverty dropped, and life expectancy rose dramatically. Lee Kuan Yew didn't just build roads and towers, he built a mindset, a belief that discipline, honesty, and education are the true foundations of freedom. His famous quote still echoes across the nation, "I'm not interested in being loved, I'm interested in being respected." And that respect lives on, in the order of its streets, the strength of its institutions, and the quiet confidence of its people. Singapore's success story begins and forever bears his name. Part 2. The Silent Strength. Kwa Geok Choo, Behind the brilliance of Singapore's founding father stood a woman of quiet strength, Kwa Geok Choo, the wife, confidant, and lifelong companion of Lee Kuan Yew. While her husband shaped Singapore's destiny on the world stage, Kwa Geok Choo shaped the man who shaped the nation. Born in 1920, Kwa was no ordinary woman of her time. She was fiercely intelligent, independent, and remarkably ahead of her generation. At a time when few Asian women pursued higher education abroad, she earned her place at the University of Cambridge, where she excelled in law and graduated with top honors, even outperforming her future husband. Those who knew her described her as brilliant but humble, decisive but soft-spoken, a rare combination of intellect and grace. When she and Lee returned to Singapore, they founded a law firm together, Lee and Lee, which would later become one of the nation's most respected. But her role went far beyond the courtroom. She was her husband's most trusted advisor, his intellectual equal, and often his first editor. Lee himself admitted that she reviewed his most important speeches and legal drafts, ensuring every word reflected clarity, truth, and purpose. During the turbulent years of Singapore's political birth, when threats loomed from communists, regional instability, and economic uncertainty, Kwa Geok Choo was the calm center. She stood beside her husband through imprisonment of colleagues, political battles, and public pressure. Yet she never sought the spotlight. She never gave public speeches, never demanded attention, and never used her influence for personal gain. Her quiet impact was profound. She helped draft key sections of Singapore's Women's Charter, a landmark law that improved women's rights, protected families, and advanced gender equality. This became one of the social pillars of modern Singapore, ensuring that progress included fairness, not just growth. Despite her proximity to power, Kwa Geok Choo lived with humility. She took the bus like everyone else. She managed her home herself. She dressed simply, preferring modest clothes over extravagance. Those who met her often described her as warm, intelligent, and kind, a woman who embodied the dignity and restraint that would later define Singapore's national character. When she passed away in 2010, Singaporeans from all walks of life wept openly. Crowds lined the streets not just to honor the wife of Lee Kuan Yew, but to pay tribute to a woman who represented everything their country stood for: discipline, grace, and quiet strength. In truth, Kwa Geok Choo was more than the wife of a leader. She was the moral compass of the nation's founding journey. Her partnership with Lee Kuan Yew wasn't built on power, but on purpose. Two brilliant minds united by one dream: to build a nation that would stand the test of time. Her legacy still lives on, in Singapore's fairness, its strength, and its soul. For while Lee Kuan Yew built Singapore's body, Kwa Geok Choo nurtured its heart. Part 3. The Heir of Efficiency. Lee Hsien Loong. When Lee Hsien Loong became Singapore's third prime minister in 2004, many wondered, could anyone possibly follow the footsteps of a man like Lee Kuan Yew? Would the son always live under his father's shadow, or would he carve his own identity in the story of Singapore's progress? Born in 1952, Lee Hsien Loong grew up in a household where excellence was not a choice. It was a way of life. His father led a nation. His mother was a legal mind who valued discipline and humility. From them, he inherited both intellect and steadiness, the perfect blend for leadership in an era that demanded both innovation and restraint. As a young man, Lee excelled academically. He studied mathematics at the University of Cambridge, where his analytical brilliance was quickly recognized. Later, he earned a master's degree in public administration from Harvard, gaining a global perspective that would shape his future governance style. But his first major impact came in the Singapore Armed Forces, where he rose to the rank of brigadier general. It was here that he built his reputation as a strategist, calm under pressure, logical in decisions, and respected by those he led. When he entered politics in the 1980s, many saw him as the natural successor to continue Singapore's growth story. Yet Lee Hsien Loong was not content to simply inherit a system. He wanted to modernize it. His leadership marked the beginning of a new era of pragmatism and digital transformation. Under his vision, Singapore evolved beyond an efficient economy into a smart nation. This wasn't just a slogan, it became a blueprint for the future. Public services went digital, data-driven technologies improved transportation, and automation streamlined everything from ports to hospitals. He envisioned a city that ran not only on discipline, but also on innovation. Hsien Loong understood that while his father built Singapore's foundations, the next challenge was to future-proof it. He encouraged creativity and entrepreneurship, investing heavily in research, technology, and education. Programs like Skills Future were launched to help citizens learn continuously, ensuring no one was left behind in the digital age. Yet his tenure wasn't without challenges. The new generation of Singaporeans grew up in comfort and prosperity, and with that came different expectations. They wanted more openness, more freedom of expression, and a softer government touch. Meanwhile, global pressures, rising living costs, climate change, and international competition tested Singapore's resilience. Through it all, Hsien Loong remained calm, diplomatic, and deeply thoughtful. His leadership style was softer and more consultative than his father's, yet equally principled. He listened more, spoke gently, and focused on consensus, but never compromised on integrity or national unity. Critics sometimes called him cautious, supporters called him steady, a man who preferred results over rhetoric, and the results spoke for themselves. Under his watch, Singapore maintained its reputation as one of the least corrupt nations on earth, one of the most competitive economies, and one of the safest societies to live in. Hsien Loong's message to Singaporeans has always been clear. Success must be earned every single day. He once reminded the nation, Singapore's success didn't fall from the sky. We made it happen. For over 2 decades, he has quietly upheld that belief, balancing tradition and progress, logic and empathy, power and humility. In the end, Hsien Loong didn't just inherit power, he inherited a mission to safeguard what his father built while preparing Singapore for what comes next. And through his steady hand and visionary mind, he has proven that the legacy of the Lee family is not about dominance. It's about duty, service, and the constant pursuit of excellence. Part 4. The Family Philosophy. What makes the Lee family so influential, even beyond politics, is not just their leadership. It's their philosophy of life, a set of beliefs that became the invisible foundation of Singapore's success story. These values weren't written in any constitution, yet they live in every school, every policy, and every citizen who calls Singapore home. First, discipline. To the Lees, freedom without order was chaos. Lee Kuan Yew believed that a nation's character determines its destiny, and discipline was non-negotiable. That's why Singapore's rules are famously strict. No littering, no corruption, no bending the law for convenience. To outsiders, it might seem rigid or controlling, but to Singaporeans, it's the reason children can walk safely at night, the reason public spaces are clean, and the reason the system works. Discipline, in their eyes, was not punishment. It was protection. Second, meritocracy. Lee Kuan Yew built a government that rewarded competence over connections. He wanted a society where talent, not background, determined one's future. From civil service to universities, opportunities were open to all who earned them. This principle, in that everyone rises by effort, not privilege, became a source of national pride. It turned Singapore into a country where the son of a taxi driver could become a minister, where excellence became the common language. Third, multicultural harmony. Singapore's population is a mix of Chinese, Malay, Indian, and other communities. The Lees understood that such diversity could divide or unite, and they chose unity. Lee Kuan Yew and his successors built laws ensuring fairness among all races and religions, emphasizing respect and inclusion. Public housing policies mixed ethnic groups intentionally, preventing segregation and nurturing a shared identity. Today, Singapore's peaceful coexistence stands as one of the world's best examples of multicultural harmony. Fourth, foresight. The Lees never thought in election cycles, they thought in generations. Lee Kuan Yew often planned 20 to 30 years ahead. He imagined Singapore as a global hub long before it became one. His son, Hsien Loong, inherited that same mindset, anticipating the digital revolution, preparing for aging populations, and investing in education and sustainability before they became urgent. To the Lees, Leadership meant preparing the nation for problems that didn't exist yet. And finally, service. For the Lees, leadership was a responsibility, not a privilege. They never flaunted wealth or luxury. Lee Kuan Yew lived in the same modest Oxley Road home all his life. Kwa Geok Choo refused extravagance and valued simplicity. Their son continues the same way, reserved, humble, and focused on duty over image. To them, power was not to be enjoyed, but to be used wisely and selflessly. This philosophy, discipline, meritocracy, harmony, foresight, and service, became the soul of Singapore. It turned a small island with no resources into a global example of efficiency and stability. The Lee family didn't just lead Singapore, they defined what good leadership looks like, grounded in character, guided by wisdom, and committed to the greater good. Part 5. The Legacy and the Future. As the years pass, the influence of the Lee family continues to echo across Singapore, not through authority or political dominance, but through values and culture. Their leadership shaped the nation's institutions, but their mindset shaped its people. Every student who studies diligently, every civil servant who upholds integrity, and every worker who takes pride in precision, they all carry a fragment of the Lee legacy. Yet Singapore's landscape today is very different from the one Lee Kuan Yew once fought to build. The younger generation has grown up in a country of abundance, clean streets, stable jobs, and reliable infrastructure. They have never known the poverty, fear, or uncertainty that once haunted their parents and grandparents. Ironically, this comfort, born from success, now presents new challenges: complacency, entitlement, and an impatience for change. The Lee family's greatest test is no longer political, it is generational. Can Singapore's founding values of discipline, unity, and meritocracy survive in an age of comfort? Can a nation raised in prosperity continue to embody the grit that built it? Older Singaporeans still remember vividly the tears of Lee Kuan Yew on television in 1965, the day Singapore became an unwillingly independent nation. Those tears were not of defeat, but of deep love and worry for a people suddenly left to chart their own destiny. That moment, raw and unforgettable, still defines Singapore's collective spirit. It reminds citizens that their nation was not born of privilege, but of struggle and sacrifice. Today, Hsien Loong carries that legacy with quiet dignity. His leadership has always been rooted in humility and foresight. He understands that no leader, not even from the Lee lineage, can hold power forever. So he is focused on building institutions strong enough to thrive beyond any one family. By nurturing younger ministers, encouraging innovation, and promoting inclusion, he is guiding Singapore toward a smooth transition into its next era. And that transition is crucial. The world is changing fast. Automation, climate change, inequality, and global uncertainty all demand a new kind of resilience. But if there is one lesson the Lees have taught Singapore, it is that resilience is not inherited, it is practiced. The story of the Lee family, in the end, is not just about politics or governance. It is about vision, the belief that greatness is not determined by the size of your land, but by the strength of your purpose. From a tiny island with no resources, they built a nation admired across the world, efficient, clean, and deeply united. The skyscrapers that now fill Singapore's skyline are not just monuments of glass and steel. They are monuments of discipline, intelligence, and faith in the impossible. The Lees may one day step away from politics, but their spirit will remain in the nation's heartbeat, in its people's character, and in its enduring belief that with courage, education, and unity, even the smallest nation can shine the brightest. Conclusion: a family larger than blood. When people speak of the Lee family, they often describe them as politicians, founders, or leaders. But in truth, they are something more profound, a living symbol of what Singapore stands for. Their story is not just a tale of governance, it is a reflection of the nation's spirit, built on unity, education, and integrity. They showed that even the smallest country, with no natural resources or vast land, can rise to global respect through discipline and purpose. They proved that success does not come from noise or power displays, but from quiet commitment, structure, and a deep sense of responsibility. Every corner of Singapore tells their story. The MRT trains that run precisely on time, the public parks that stay spotless, the neighborhoods where families walk safely at night. These are not accidents of progress. They are silent monuments to a vision that began decades ago. Lee Kuan Yew once said, "My greatest satisfaction in life is that Singapore is safe, peaceful, and prosperous." That dream didn't end with him. It lives on in every Singaporean who upholds honesty, hard work, and unity. The Lees shaped Singapore's body, its institutions, its policies, its direction. But it is the people who shaped its soul, turning the Lee family's ideals into daily reality. Together, they built not just a country, but a shared identity rooted in mutual respect and purpose. The legacy of the Lee family is ultimately a story of love, discipline, and destiny. Proof that leadership is not about privilege, but about responsibility. It reminds the world that true greatness begins at home, in the values we live by, in the future we build for others.